This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd Dawalt, and it's my job to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and ultimately grow your income. I've got a really cool conversation with Andy Rosic, who's doing some pretty cool stuff for the Home Depot, and we're going to talk about several things that are going to help you. He's going to talk about his method for solving problems, his method for project management, and he's been involved with a lot of projects as it relates to software and technology. So he's got a really interesting perspective on solving problems and solving big problems. We're also going to talk about some of the things he's working on that you're going to be interested in as a construction business owner and leader. Some things he's working on over at the Home Depot. He's also going to share with you some of the insights he's gathered as he has talked to contractors all over the country. He's going to talk about some of the most common challenges and things that people are doing to solve those challenges. We're going to get into that interview in just a minute. Before we do, I've got two things I want to share with you. If you are a construction business owner, I've got some free videos I want to get into your hands. They are the secrets of successful contractors, and it's going to answer a few questions for you. What strategies do the big contractors use that you don't know about? What's the hidden cost that could be killing your bottom line and you don't even know about it? Do you want to fix your cash flow or boost crew productivity? If so, you need to understand one crucial thing before you start. Do you want to drive revenue up and learn how to finish every project on time? Well, there's a different way of thinking that will just about guarantee success. So if you own a construction business, these free videos are for you. The secret strategies of successful contractors. All you got to do is go to constructionleadingedge.com/owner, OWNER, and you can get yourself your copy of those free videos, Secrets of Successful Contractors. And if you're a construction business owner, I also want to tell you about the Construction Business Accelerator. It's one of the best things that I can do for you if you own a construction business or if you're planning on starting a construction business and you want to get up the learning curve. If you want to maximize revenue, put financial stress and anxiety behind you, and turn your business into a well-oiled machine, then you might want to check out the Construction Business Accelerator over at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Here's what one member had to share. He would tell you that Todd does a great job helping companies like ours to grow. We've implemented a lot of what we've learned in the CBA that's been helping to manage and grow our company. That's from Roy in Ohio. Right now, for a limited time, when you join the Construction Business Accelerator, you're going to get around $9,000 worth of bonuses, including the Revenue Maximizer, which is one of the latest things that I've put together. It's going to help you build execution plans to maximize your revenue. You're also going to get the Sales Accelerator, the Project Execution Formula, the Mindset Upgrade, which may be the most powerful thing that I can help you with, is upgrading your mindset. And there's a whole lot more stuff in there that we don't have time to talk about. Now, these bonuses will not be around for long, and I've only got so many spots available in the Construction Business Accelerator. So to find out how it can help you maximize your revenue, put financial anxiety and stress behind you, and turn your business into a well-oiled, efficient machine, go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Andy Rosic. First of all, Andy, thanks for being on the podcast today. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Todd.
Excellent. So let's talk about, we're going to get into your current role, what you're up to right now in a little while, but you've got a lot of background in problem solving, product management, project management. So I want to jump right into that because I know a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast are either project managers, superintendents, and they're directly related with managing projects and problem solving. So let's talk about your method for managing big, nebulous, messy projects and problems. Just how do you think about project management from, and you can tell people about your background as you go through that, but let's just talk about how do you attack a big, hairy problem?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think the thing with big problems or big projects is that almost everything we end up tackling is ends up being bigger than we expected, right? Sometimes we know it's huge. Other times we think, oh, I got this. And then we're neck deep in it going, uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into? Sometimes those are assigned to us by, a boss or whatever. Other times we raise our hand and then we're going, now what? But yeah, I have 2 decades of experience building products. So I'm a project and product manager who's driving engineers, just the software development kind, to build some solution. And just like any project, all sorts of scope creep happens all the time. Dates are missed. Money is an issue. All the normal constraints come into play. And so some of the things that I've found that are really helpful, so I actually have a project management method that I call Projectopia, which is just a funny combining of like project and utopia. So the idea that you can cut stress out of project management really comes down to a couple things, and I'll give those, and maybe we can decide which ones we want to jump into. But the number one thing is you have to kind of lay it all out. I use an example of building a website. I think most people at least can conceptually say, all right, I've been to a website. It's got pieces and pages to it. Doesn't sound that hard. Well, if you've ever built a website, you could be building one forever, right? If you want to add a blog, how many blog posts is the right number before you hit publish, right? And so this idea that a website, which sounds contained, even in itself, it can be outrageously big as a project, is to write out all the pieces. Like, what do you think it takes to equal a website? Like, when would you hit publish and be okay with it? And so I take people all the time through this example and sort of say, all right, you got this suitcase that is way too full, right? You got a product that you want to sell. So you've got e-commerce, and you've got a blog, and you've got an about page, you've got a home page, and you've got email capture, and all these things. It's like, man, there's too much in this suitcase, right? So the idea that you can unpack it all, look at it all, and then the biggest thing, this is the number one takeaway for any project, is what can you trim before you ever begin? So in other words, what is the smallest group of things that equals the first deliverable for your project? And that is where you start your focus. So now you can say, all right, it's not website. What I need is a domain, like where are they going to type in to get to my website, a host who's going to host those pages of information, and I need a homepage. And that really honestly is kind of the very, very minimum of having a website. So that's just an example that, like, now as a distinct project, I can focus on that. I can estimate that. I can get a team on board. We can deliver that. Then we can look at phase 2 of the project. And I think this is very similar construction speak, right? Is, if I have to do foundations, right? So I got to pour a foundation. I got to have all that done before I can do phase 2, which might be framing. And so same way in your website, phase 2 might be a bunch of social media elements, maybe an about page. Maybe your phase 2 is selling products or getting your podcasts listed on there. So you can break things out in phases, and each of those phases is way easier to manage, right? And I think human nature gets us in the end, which is if I say website, what I'll immediately start doing is a bunch of tasks, right? I'll go, oh, I should create a contact page, and I should create this. And pretty soon you're hours in, days in, maybe weeks in, and you're still no closer to hitting publish on that thing or saying, we're done, we can deliver this. So that is the biggest thing, is really understanding that you need to lay it all out so you can decide what you're not going to do. And I think it sounds both counterintuitive, and it sounds kind of like, well, yeah, duh, of course, there's things you can't do. But that deciding what not to do first is the piece that almost everyone, and myself included at times, we skip. We just go right to the, like, what's the big thing? And that is what ends up bearing each of us and causing all that stress and causing all that churn and struggle. It's just because we didn't take the time to say, what am I not doing first?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think it's pretty it's pretty clear, it's pretty straightforward on a construction project for most contractors, because the what needs to be done and what's not going to be done is typically outlined in the contract documents. But where I think this really comes into play would be some of the initiatives within a company or within a project that need to be solved in order to support the business. So I work with coaching clients, I work with construction business owners to help them solve their problems. And so the seam where I think this really applies is in a situation where somebody says, we need to sell more, for example, or we need to systematize. We need a system for this, or we need to go do this thing. And I see it all the time where people get an idea, and well, I'll give a couple of examples. One example of, let's say it's a new product or a new service. Somebody says, hey, I think we can go make money doing fill in the blank, whether it's working in a different city, putting water heaters in, replacing slate roofs, whatever it is. They get some idea of a product, and then they just start running with this product or service that they think is really cool, and they buy trucks, and they do lots of research, and they hire people, and they launch this thing, and then they're disappointed when there are crickets because nobody else cares about that, or there are all sorts of other people out there solving that problem as well or better than them. So let's jump into that. Let's talk about the idea of, let's say somebody's listening to this and they have an idea for a new product or service, probably a service. If they're in construction, it's going to be consulting, or it's remediation, rehabilitation, new construction, something like that. What are some of the keys that they need to think about? Where should they start? Let's do that. Where should they start if they're thinking about rolling out a new service or growing their business?
That is, you are fundamentally correct, Todd. That is a mistake I see made all the time. I've mentored probably hundreds of startup founders, so people who are launching a new business, and they're trying to figure out how to really find traction and grow that business, because I came out of that sort of tech startup world. The number one problem I see that relates exactly to what you just said is where the founder, the owner, the kind of the key people in that company fall in love with the product. So in this case, the solution, like you said, we're going to go do remediation. We're going to add that on. And you fall in love with this idea of that this is a great solution. And the real issue is that you didn't fall in love with the problem. And so what happens is that there's a disconnect. So the person who has the problem, they have an idea about how they want it solved, but yet you're offering them your idea of a solution, and those don't always match. And so even though like water remediation or smoke remediation is a real thing, you can take it on. How you implement that is the difference between success and failure. So what I recommend all the time, literally just had this conversation with a small company in the area here not long ago, who was in love with their technology, their product, the thing they were going to offer to the world and change the world. And I asked them, who's your customer? And they hemmed and hawed and kind of went all over it. And so when I let them finish, and I said, so you don't know? And they kind of blushed and said, no, not really, but this is going to be amazing. And so we had to kind of reverse and rewind and come all the way back to the beginning and say, okay, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And are you still okay pursuing the solution to that problem if it doesn't look like your current solution, the answer that you came up with in your little tiny corner of the universe? And that was really the eye opener, right? That we realized together, they kind of unpacked like, well, there's probably 6 or 8 different ways we could solve the core problem that we're after. And so, sure, there's damage remediation, and where I already mentioned that one. We'll use that one. You can do that. But when you think about it from a customer perspective, someone who's got a home or business that's been damaged, what are the things they're hoping for versus what are the things you're hoping to offer, right? And so a little bit of legwork at the front. So you undoubtedly have customers, tons of customers you've already worked with on other projects. Why not reach back out to them and find out if any of them have ever had damage that needed to be remediated? You could potentially talk with other groups who have access to customers who've done that. Maybe it's a non-competitive partner company that does some of that, maybe in another area. So you can go try and talk to real people and say, what did you like about the service? Like, well, I was stressed out. Okay, well, great. So you were stressed out. Why did you choose this company over another? Well, I either knew or I didn't know, or it was insurance-based, or you're going to get answers, right? But you need to collect a bunch of those to really understand, well, maybe to do remediation well is to build something that insurance companies want to sell, right? Like, it's not necessarily customer marketed, it's through their insurance. So you start to unpack the problem, you start to unpack whatever hurdles there are around that problem, and then you can decide, is this a business I even want to try? And let's say all the answers are still yes. Then before you get all crazy and make new business cards or change your website or do anything else, just do some one-offs, right? Like, try to find some customers. You really don't have any product or company unless someone's willing to pay you real dollars. They'll get their wallet out and pay you money. You've now at least proven the solution is valuable, but you still have not yet proven that it's scalable, that it's going to sustain you and produce real revenue. And so you have to be careful. And this is that part about what are we not going to do? Well, we're not going to rush ahead and get crazy with lots of marketing and sales and everything else. We're going to say, okay, can we get people to pay us to do this? And if the answer is yes, then, only then, do you go to step two, which is, can we get more people to pay us to do this? And at some point you'll reach a kind of an inflection point, which is where you go, okay, yeah, enough people are paying us to do this. We're getting enough businesses from this chunk of problem space. So let's invest now. Now we can say, hey, if we put some money behind this, we marketed it, we changed some branding, whatever, we could probably drive a lot of business over here. So now you put that investment. And that is literally, it sounds boring. It's kind of like, well, okay, I have to ask a bunch of people, then I got to try it, then I got to, but is it better to go through that process, or is it just spend a lot of money and have it just, like you said, quick? So that really is the basis there, is falling in love with the customer's side of the problem. And then you figure out what the right solutions are that will match their desire.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Let me ask you this. I've seen this so many times where somebody falls in love with the solution and then they start running with the solution and they become a solution in search of a problem. So, there's the old saying, to a guy with a hammer, every problem is a nail. And we've probably all run across these salespeople who are like, yeah, you need to buy a fill in the blank because that's what I'm selling. And you don't care about that. So why do business owners, why are we so reluctant to find out that an idea isn't good or it's not there? Have you run into that? Like, what's behind that? Why don't people do it the way you say? Why do we tend to fall in love with the solution and then run with it and be overly optimistic until it just crashes and burns?
Yeah, I think the simplest answer is our brains like to latch on to ideas that make sense quickly, right? So we try to find matching things, right? So like if this thing works in that industry, it ought to work in mine, right? Let's come up with a quick, this matches, and then I can move on, and now I can go create that thing. So we like to find sort of simple, easy answers and hang on to those. And I think there's also a bit of pride in that, I've invented a solution in my head that I think is awesome. And so everyone else will too. And it's a little bit ego deflating to find out that That's not the answer everyone wanted, which again is why it takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of kind of mental power to say, okay, I'm in a space that I love. I love doing construction. I love doing, whatever elements of construction that I'm in. And so if that's true, then you ought to love delivering a solution that people really want, right? And the thing with making that shift, while it feels a little bit, bruising to your ego to let go of whatever, fantastical ideas that you've came up with, it's just as valuable, if not more so, to find out that by creating the solution that people really wanted, it makes your marketing easier, your sales easier, your customers are happier. So the upside is so much bigger. It's just you have to get past that kind of ego hurdle at the beginning. And I'll be honest, it's not easy, right? That's a tough thing to do battle with in your head. And it's why it's good to have a team around you and not to do things in mental isolation. It's good to have customers to talk to. I mean, I'll tell you a great example of this. I was part of a 4-man team who we were pitching Apple Retail. So one of the biggest companies on the planet, a little tiny scrappy startup, went in to pitch them on this idea of mobile payments. And we were in there with literally a laundry list of the biggest names in, transaction processing, hardware and software in the industry. They're all the names that you swipe your credit card through all over the place. And it was like one after the other of these pitches. We walked in, we pitched for that. Well, we actually got the business. And it turned out later that we found out why when we asked, because we were curious, as much as probably they were curious why they didn't get it. We said, how come you chose us? We're small, you're huge. Like, what's the deal? And they said it was one thing. You walked into the meeting and you had everybody around the table, and we're talking Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives and Ron Johnson, like all these names around Apple that are hugely famous. We walked in and said, what do you guys want? And that got us the business, because everyone else came in and said, here's what we will give you, or here's what we have, here's the solution. And we said, what do you want? How do you want to solve this? And it took, 12 physical working prototypes, like 3D printed plastic with electronics inside. I mean, it was a painful process, but we worked together with them to come up with the solution that actually met their hopes and their desires and the problem itself. And so that got us the business. And so I can tell you that, I have real world practical experience, like this works. Like, it is important for the customer to say, yeah, you're solving my problem. I'm not making a leap to buy your solution.
That's great. I love that approach, because it puts the focus on the customer instead of your solution. And that posture certainly sets you up to be more successful at selling and then upselling and building relationships, as opposed to the posture of, I have a hammer and let me show you how your problem is a nail, even though it looks like a pipe wrench or an irrigation sprinkler. It's really a nail. And if you just let me just buy my hammer, and I'll show you how it's a nail. For those of you who are listening, go back and listen to episode 61, which is a conversation with my good friend Ryan Lawson, talking about selling on value and putting the emphasis on the customer. So I think there's going back to pride and ego, there's this approach or this mindset that we have to have all the answers for our clients, and that if we don't have all the answers, then our clients don't want to work with us. But the reality is, in my experience, and I've built some really big stuff, been involved with projects up to $100 million, clients want somebody who's going to collaborate with them and help them solve their problem. So I think it goes all the way back to focus on the problem, focus on the business need, focus on the customer, and then look at what you have to offer that can help them. And don't assume that you have to have all the answers going in, because they don't know, quite frankly. Even at the beginning of a project, they don't know what they want. They want somebody to help them figure out, what they want. All right, so let's shift gears now. We talked about adding a new service line or taking on a new product. Let's talk about a process. Let's say there's a problem or an opportunity for greatness, however you want to call it, within a company. There's some inefficiency, there's some chaos, there's something that's not going well that needs to be solved. It's not a product, it's not a service, it's not really a project where you're building something, but there's a problem inside an organization that needs to be solved. What are some starting thoughts? What's your method? What's your approach? What are some things people should start with when they think about solving a problem that's inside their business? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the hardest ones because we become blind to our own processes, right? When you do something often enough, day in, day out, you don't even realize you're doing it. And this is one of the reasons why when you're doing customer research, there's sort of two sides. There's quantitative, which means it's very mathematical, like you do something this many times, or there's this many people who do a thing or have a problem. And then there's this qualitative, which means I can't necessarily match each customer up because I'm going to go in and watch them. They're going to talk to me, and I'm going to have to gather sort of this. It's more quality information, but it's harder to make a distinct, data analysis out of it. You have to sort of mine it for like, what are they saying? What are they doing? Well, that qualitative side is that side where you really can uncover big problems, especially in your own organization. But, and this is the big caveat or the big asterisk, you almost always need someone else to come see it for you. So, for example, you guys who are listening, you can silently raise your hands because I can't see them. How many of you have manila folders scattered about your office in some way, shape, or form? They might be semi-organized in various holders. They might be lying around, maybe on your desk. But I'm pretty confident if you're actually raising your hands, there's a lot of hands raised. And most people don't even see the fact that they have so many. I've taken photos in multiple contractors' offices, and it's astounding how kind of insane it is. And yet they have this mental map that they're storing going, I know these are incoming, these need to be processed, these are jobs that are started, those are jobs that are finished that need follow-up. And they know where they all are, but if they were out sick and they called in, they would have to explain to Janine or Carl or whoever, where to go to find a specific folder and get that thing. But that's a great example where you almost need, bring your teenager in and have them sit there and watch you for the day, or bring, someone from the outside and just say, watch me do what I do and take notes and then explain it back to me is a really, really great way. And this could be, almost anyone can do this. But you have to have someone who's not used to your daily process. And they're going to, at the end of the day, when they're like, you walked over to that file cabinet 23 times, you're going to go, okay, something's wrong with how I've laid out my business process. Or, your salespeople who are supposed to be out in the field came into the office 9 times in one day. So what is it that is requiring them or drawing them to come back rather than staying out, closing more leads or getting more leads to the top of the funnel? So those are really, really strong ways to kind of have someone observe and ask you just very point blank questions, because they don't know, right? They don't know why you do this thing. And so it can be very enlightening when you get questioned on something that you have to answer and you don't have an answer for, right? It's like, well, that's how we've always done it, or that's the way it works, or I just know where that stuff is. And if you have that answer, it's a terrible answer, and you have an opportunity to improve some efficiency somewhere. And as you all are highly aware, right, we have some of the worst efficiency in the construction industry of all industries anywhere, in terms of skilled labor, in terms of just business process. So there's always opportunities to grow, and that's one of the things I love about my job is I'm working to bring some efficiency to materials, sort of finding, pricing, purchasing, and having materials delivered. And by doing so, my hope is that it frees up people in the office for more time to then focus on the next problem set. What is that next problem set, right? Is it sales leads coming in? Is it management of your team out on the work sites? Is it your accounting? Is it, getting from drawings to that materials list? Like, what is the next problem you want to solve? Because your time is not focused on buying materials. You have it to focus on the next problem. So that's how I look at these things. And again, coming in from the outside, there were a lot of pro construction folks who've been doing this a long time who I went and met with, just talk about my solution I'm building. And when I echoed back to them their business process, they were shocked. Like, wow, I never actually thought about how much paperwork is laying around all over the place. I know where it all is. I'm like, yeah, but that's bad, right? And they're like, yeah, it's really bad. So it's funny when a different set of eyes can sort of mirror back to you what's going on, like how much that can be eye-opening. Yeah,
definitely. So tell us about your role. What are you working on now? And just talk to us about what you're up to right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a product manager at the Home Depot, and I'm in a software division of ours. So if you've ever been in to our stores, which most people have, there's a pro desk, and behind that pro desk is software that those pro desk associates are using to help you out, to find products that are or aren't on the shelves. What people don't realize is that hidden away neatly in that little computer sitting there is over 1 million products that aren't on our shelves, and they're not on HomeDepot.com either. So a lot of contractors I talk to will check our website and go, I don't see it there. I know it's not on the shelf in the store, so I have to go somewhere else. Well, it turns out we deal with most of the same, all the way down to the regional local vendors that you're out, trying to interact with individually. We deal with them on a much larger scale, all through this software we built. The problem is it's kind of like a 1980s travel agent, right? Like when you couldn't go to Expedia to buy a ticket, you had to call someone or go into this travel agency, and their magical computer could print out this airline ticket for you that you could not get anywhere else. That's kind of how our ProDesk software is, right? It's hidden behind, you have to ask the right questions. You don't get to use it or access it. My job is to free it and get it out into contractors' hands directly. So you could start to actually shop across vendors, across different delivery schedules, price breaks based on, quantities, things that you can see and quantify, really alter the course of how you purchase materials. So that's what I'm working on. It's super exciting to me. I feel like it fundamentally is going to help a lot of companies grow because they can manage their purchasing in a way. When you think about operating margins, there's outside of like casinos and tobacco, nobody has operating margins in the double digits, right? Usually single digit percentage is your actual profit margin for your company. And if I could provide some level of percentage discounts across materials because you're getting smarter about your purchasing, we could actually change your operating budget without changing anything else, the number of jobs you're doing, anything else. That's pretty exciting. Then again, leads to new opportunities. You go, wow, I'm more efficient this way. I can compete. I can get more bids. I can hire more people. So to me, that's why I get up in the morning. It's really fun to be a part of something that I hope can begin to change the space and hopefully create a bigger marketplace for more vendors to join in and work across broader distances, right? Some vendors are very, very local. But we've built some folks up to become multi-state and broad region suppliers for us because of, basically we're their sales engine. So it's fun stuff.
So what are some misconceptions, or maybe not misconceptions, maybe the question is, what are some things that are available at Home Depot, at the Pro Desk, that people didn't even know were there? What are the things behind the curtain that are available right now that they could be taking advantage of? And then maybe if there's something pretty cool that's coming down the road that you can hint at, that would be helpful as well.
Sure. I think so. Some of the most frequently an aha moment items that I encounter with different pros is on the service level. So we can do rooftop delivery of roofing materials. We can do boom and scatter with drywall. And there's a whole laundry list of various, like specific delivery options that we have. The other ones are around what materials we have. We have everything from roof trusses to custom cut metal, dimensional lumber. Again, some of the people are almost always shocked that we have the same vendor they're buying from, and often have it at a better price because we buy more through them. So it kind of goes on down the line. There's a huge inventory of products that are either, we can correlate through stores, through our own warehouses, and then, like I said, through just tons and tons of big, medium, and small vendors. So whether that's very specific, roofing products for the Florida market, which is different than the Seattle market, or certain types of lumber, certain types of, whatever the product may be, we have those in all those different regions. So that is the thing that I think most people get surprised by. In terms of sort of teaser, I can't talk a lot about things that aren't out yet. What I can say is that I am using the methodology we've talked about so far, is that I'm out literally living with pros and watching them do their business and talking to them and sort of seeing these common pervasive problems across, trade specialists to generalists, and really trying to figure out and testing, putting real software in their hands, putting real, example tools that they can test and tell me what's good, bad, ugly, or they're indifferent to it or whatever, but to start to either validate or invalidate the different hypotheses we have. And we're honing in on what the right solution is that customers, really want and find value in. And again, my goal is not to get anyone to just see something so they can beat us up on price, or it's not to get them to come to us and buy once. I want to build something that they're delighted in, that yeah, you have solved my problem. I want to buy from you. And then even if you choose to buy elsewhere, that's okay. The level of difference between how we serve you versus someone else hopefully will highlight how much you should come back and buy through my tool. So I'm using the same exact methodology to try and figure out what customers really want and need. But the sort of the tease is what I just said. We have this marketplace that you can't get to today, and very soon my goal is to have that be available to you. And I think the exciting thing is that it will be available in ways both directly as well as potentially through tools or software that you already use. And I think that's the part that is most exciting to me, in that whenever I think about a solution, if you had like Salesforce to manage your sales team, you wouldn't want to go to some third-party lead generation tool that doesn't work with Salesforce, right? You're going to buy something that plugs right in, so those leads come into your sales tool. In the same way, my dream is to see that marketplace exists and is available through some software that folks are already using today.
I like it. So perhaps they're in their project management software, and a note comes up from a daily report that they're low on material. Perhaps there's some sort of integration there where instead of picking up the phone or going to a website, there's the possibility of just ordering materials through an existing piece of software. So that sounds pretty exciting. You mentioned that your big part of your process at the beginning is to understand problems, to get with customers, get close to customers, understand problems. So that's given you the opportunity to interact with a lot of contractors across the country. What are a couple of the most common and most painful problems that contractors are trying to solve based on your interaction?
I think a couple of the most frequent ones that I've seen involve, one, the fact that we're still faxing requests for pricing and or the orders afterwards. I actually took a photo of a fax, like a really well-worn fax in one office, and sent it to my team. It was like, anyone know what this new technology is? And it took a few minutes before someone replied back with like, is that a fax? Yeah, we're still doing that, right? There's still a lot of paperwork in construction. So that's painful to me, right? I want to definitely automate things that should be more automated than that. The other one is whether you're calling to those vendors, faxing it, or maybe you've gotten really advanced and you're emailing to them. The fact that you're sending these things out to multiple vendors and getting back information from all of them, and in most cases, while you can sort of mentally sort through, like let's say it was roofing, I sent out for 7 bids on this. I can sort of comparatively in my brain sort which one match what, but like the data itself isn't normalized, right? Like they don't all refer to the same things in the exact same way. There's like trademarked brand names. There's the way they describe it, which descriptive words are in there. These are all the like daily struggles, right? When you're trying to say, is a shingle a shingle a shingle, or is it not? Are these 3 things different? And so that is, again, one of those things I think, we've worked really hard and are continuing to work towards solving that idea of, I want to shop across vendors and I want options, but it's very difficult when those options are not worded the same, when they're not sort of categorized the same. And now I have to do the work of figuring out, is a hollow wood door the same across all these vendors? Well, there's a lot of different Hollywood doors, right? And so what are we talking about here? And who's giving me which version of what? So that's a big problem, I think, is just this idea that things are very scattered, and it's hard to go out to bigger vendors that you want to deal with and then try to shop across them when they don't all categorize the data the same way. So those are 2 big ones I see over and over. That again, we've already talked about it. The fact that there's just so many like manila folders and paper coming in from the field, paper going back out to the field. Those are the kinds of things that I see and go, I don't care whether you buy from me or not. Like I could sit down and give you lots of scenarios around how to fix, digitizing some of that, and even using like free tools that exist out in the world that you could make your life a lot better just around reducing some of that paper load. So those are all like things I'm seeing over and over. And I think, to your point of your podcast, I mean, you talk all the time about these very kind of like simple efficiency things that construction businesses need to do. And I see those same problems just repeated, one after the next. and those are the ones, again, where you get stuck living with the way you do business. And there's just nothing as enlightening as having someone out there. They don't even have to be an expert. Just say, watch what I do, or what happens in our office today, and take notes, and then see if you can explain it back to me later. And when you have someone do that, like you'll probably be shocked. And then once the shock wears off, then you can sit down and go, okay, now let me take one and address it and maybe solve it. And then we'll go to the next one and we'll address it and solve it. But like first you have to know they exist.
Yep. Good advice. See the symptoms, find the root cause, and then just start picking them off one by one and going from there. Great stuff. So you mentioned that you had a couple of questions for me, and I'm not sure what those are, but I'll just flip the microphone around, and if there's any feedback that I can share, or if there's any questions I can answer for you, I'll just throw it to you. So what can I help you with?
Sure. So I have a couple questions related to what we're talking about. And so the first one is maybe the same thing you're asking me. So what are some of the common or the pervasive problems that you see as you consult for various companies? I think what are some of those common problems that you're seeing or that you're tackling with them? And then the flip side of that question is how do those look today versus a few years back? Like, has there been a shift? Is there a trend towards maybe things getting better, or is it sort of the same things that you're tackling on a daily basis?
Yeah, great question. Some of the most common problems that I help people with, in no particular order. The first one is in the construction industry. If you're managing projects, if you're building stuff in today's age, you're primarily an information broker, especially if you're a project manager on let's say you're managing a commercial project with lots of different team members. You are primarily an information broker. And the challenge is maintaining the flow of information so that the right people get the right information at the right level of detail at the right time. That's the challenge in managing projects. And frankly, there's lots of solutions out there, but the problem is the flow of information, getting information from these fragmented and nowadays very busy people, and getting the right information to the right people at the right time and the right level of detail. That's the challenge. And so one of the mistakes I see people jumping to solutions before they really understand what the problem is, or as you said, they fall in love with the solution. I've seen people fall in love with these ideas of software tools that will help solve this problem, but they're more in love with the solution than they are about solving the problem. So that the understanding that the role of a construction company, once you get to a certain size, is you have to be a good information broker, and that becomes a lid on a lot of organizations. You will only grow to the point where you can maintain the flow of information properly. Prime example, several years ago, I guess it was probably 2011, 2012, I was brought in to run a company, and when I got there were maybe 15 employees doing around $4 million in revenue, and the company had hit the wall as to the work that could be supported with the systems that were in place, with the systems specifically about the flow of information. And if you think about it, everything is about information. It's about the flow of information, whether it's materials, equipment, labor, completed work, contracts, changes, timesheets. It's all information that has to be brokered. So long story short, I went about solving a lot of these problems, finding out what the root cause was, putting solutions in place, some of which were off-the-shelf software products, some were homegrown, some were just, hey, this is how we're going to do this, and this is your responsibility, some combination of technical, non-technical systems and processes. And long story short, the company grew to about 50 employees and about $10 million in revenue, so 2.5 times the revenue in about 3 years, because of the ability to maintain that flow of information. So that's a real challenge. Another big problem that I see, and it's a drum that I like to beat, is what I call right to left thinking versus left to right thinking. And so many people operate left to right, which looks like, hey, here's a project that came across our desk, we got the contract signed, let's just get started, and let's just get to the next step. And I see this with construction contracts, I see it with tenant improvement leases, I see it with building out construction teams and processes. There's this overemphasis on just getting started and getting to the next step, some arbitrary milestone, when what you really need to do is figure out, where do you want to go? What does go all the way to the right side of the page? Where do you want to be? When do you want to be there? And then work backwards, work right to left, instead of just saying, well, let's just get started and hope for the best, because frankly, that just doesn't work out very much. So this lack of strategic thinking and just looking at what's coming next, and that's a real problem. And that just keeps, it prevents construction companies from growing, because they take on opportunities that they shouldn't be. They don't really know who they are. They don't know what they're the best in the world at. And there's lots of motion, but they're not necessarily getting anywhere. So those are a couple of big challenges that I see. And I help, well, just about all the people I work with overcome those challenges.
So, well, that's great. I call it the difference between what's urgent versus what's important. Sometimes like email can feel urgent. We got a bunch of emails coming in, phone calls, but like, what's important? What are the things that you have to be doing for your business? And then the other stuff you've important off times to take care of, and you need to kind of tame that urgency, or to your point, right? You just start doing, and you can do yourself into a corner if you're not actually looking at where you want to get to and how to get there the right way. So that's great. What about over time? Like, what has that shifted? Do you feel like that's fundamentally kind of the root problems that you're typically solving, is that flow of info and what to do next?
I have not seen it change for the better. In fact, it's very possible that the proliferation of technology may have made it worse when it comes to the flow of information. 15 years ago, when I managed projects, some people had email, some people didn't. Well, this was probably 15 to 20 years ago. It was really simple. If you needed to contact somebody, you picked up the phone and you called them, or you had a meeting. And now with the proliferation of FTP sites and ShareFile and Procore and all these different systems that don't talk to each other, people who are managing projects with multiple clients using multiple systems, they're just overwhelmed, because they're getting notifications and ShareFile notifications and SugarSync notifications, Dropbox notifications, and there's just this overwhelm of information. And 15 or 20 years ago, it either came through the fax machine or it came through the mail, or somebody dropped it off, and you had an actual box that you could look through. And right now there's this, it's just overwhelmed because of the proliferation of systems that are out there, and people, they don't know where to go. There's the paradox of choice. There are so many different systems out there. They start looking at, well, should I use provider A or B or C or D through X in some cases, and they end up just doing nothing because of the paradox of choice. And it's just overwhelming, and they just do the same old thing one more day, rather than going through the pain of trying to figure out what is the one system that's out there. And in some cases, there's no one perfect answer. The solution is do an 80-20 analysis of the options that are out there, find something that will do most of what you want, that doesn't have a whole bunch of crap you don't want, pick it, make it work. It may be a little bit of a round peg with square edges that you need to jam into your round hole, but there's no perfect solution out there, and you just need to pick one, move on, instead of spending so much time iterating and gyrating and wearing yourself out about making the choice. Pick one that looks pretty close, course correct on the way, and get back to work.
That's so true, and I see that same issue all the time. And I think it comes back to what you just said earlier, which is, if you know what you want to solve with that software, then it's a lot easier to figure out which software to do than how to implement it. But if you're just doing it because you go, well, we need project management, so we're gonna just throw Procore at it, great. There's nothing wrong with Procore. It's just you won't implement it in the right way to really solve the problem. You'll just have more alerts and more things to do. And I've seen that across every industry I've ever been in, from literally from video games to mobile payments to, big enterprise software. It doesn't matter. If you don't know what you're trying to solve, you'll pay a lot of money for just more headaches.
Yeah, people tell me all the time, I need systems and processes. I need systems and processes. Well, systems and processes are a solution to a problem. What's your problem? What's your business need? Well, I need to get more efficient. Okay, well, let's dig into that. Get to the root cause of your problem. But so many people think, and maybe it's because it goes back to this thing I mentioned earlier. People want to jump to a solution so quickly. They don't want to go through the messy middle part of figuring out the solution, or figuring out what their problems are, figuring out their solution. As you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, talking to customers, doing the quantitative analysis, the qualitative analysis. It's messy and it's not black and white. And you're going to have to make some tough decisions that don't have clear answers. And I think that's part of it. People say, I need systems and processes. I just want somebody to wave their magic wand and give me a solution that makes it all go away. Well, if you don't understand what your problems are, then if you buy a software solution, you're probably just going to have another set of problems. You're just going to be frustrated even more
right.
than you were before. So if you're thinking, oh man, Todd and Andy, I need some systems and processes, I would say get to your business need. Where's the chaos? Where are the problems at? Or find this, look for chaos, find the symptoms, and then dig down until you get the root cause. That's where you start inserting solutions and processes, is at the root cause level, not at the surface level, not at the symptom level.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Any other questions I can answer for you?
No, those are the questions I had. I think it definitely resonates with what I see out in the market space. Like I said, paper is a communication tool. And it has all sorts of problems that come along with it, whether you're faxing it, driving it, handing it, moving it along to the office. That has all sorts of problems inherent with that. I watched it happen in the healthcare industry, that they tried to move from paper records to digital. I've seen it in other spaces as well. It is a big hurdle, but that is one of those communication failure points, is if the paper gets lost, or if you write something down that I can't read, if it gets misplaced, you have all these sort of inherent problems that go along with that, which can also be replicated digitally. You can do all those same things with a digital file, but ideally you can apply some automation where, my salesperson out in the field doesn't have to drive their sketches of who they talk to into me. They could send that in digitally. That could trigger an estimator to go out. It could trigger someone to create a quote. It could, so you can add in some automation, which paper doesn't have. But again, it's figuring out those key problems that are causing your business to slow down or to not accelerate. And again, that's finding that root cause and what's the biggest bang for your buck, right? That's another piece of advice I would give people, is you look at business processes, you look at all the different potential areas where you could apply effort and make your business better. Find the ones that take the least effort and give you the most return.
Absolutely.
Start with those, right? And sometimes those are tiny and they can create really big changes in how your team communicates, or how you get sales in, or how you land your job. I don't, just because I work for someone who sells materials, I want businesses to be around to buy materials. So let's figure out what those key problems are and solve them, and find the easy ones. Get some wins under your belt and go, okay, hey, we discovered a few things we do that are really wonky and we fixed them. And that'll give you the confidence and sort of the foundation, no pun intended, under your feet to kind of go, okay, now I could maybe do this same thing with a bigger problem we're struggling with. And then now let's try to unpack that one and get to the root cause of it. It is so important to address those head on and to make some space for those, and to go, okay, I could be running around doing 100 things right now, but the most important thing I could do is to change this piece of how we do business, because it's going to lead to less of that running around and more actual, business, more actual labor placing work, more actual, sales happening. So that's, at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all after, right? Is getting the real work done, not necessarily the busy work.
Absolutely. 3 quick thoughts I'll share, and then give you the opportunity to share how people can get in touch with you. It all starts when we talk about building systems and eliminating chaos. It all starts with somebody like slamming their fist down, saying, "Damn it, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do this." So that's the realization that has to happen. Is thinking, is there a better way to do this? And that's a good posture to take with whatever you're doing. Is there a better way? What is the better way? Chances are, in construction, there is a better way. We're so far below optimum efficiency. The answer is yes, there is a better way. So how can we do this better? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, when you think about building systems, think about it from when you invest financially, you're looking for a return on investment. You're looking for your money to make you money. And when I talk to people about building systems and making their business more efficient, I talk about return on time invested. So you may have a problem that costs you 30 minutes a week of inefficiency. Maybe it costs you directly 30 minutes a week. You should be willing to spend if you could spend 6 to 8 hours to build a process that would eliminate that time, that is a fantastic return on time invested. You may think, oh man, it's only 30 minutes a week. And you're telling me I need to spend 6 or 8 hours to fix it? Well, do the math. And if it takes you 6 hours to fix that, in 12 weeks, you've broken even. And every week from then on, you're making or saving 30 minutes. So when you think about systems and processes, think about the return on time invested, because especially if you're a business owner or a leader, your time is extremely valuable. You could I've got a podcast out there with 10 things that you could be doing that are worth $1,000 an hour or more. In some cases, there's one example I gave where I spent a few hours on something and it saved me, I think it saved $5,000 a week every week because of the time I invested in that. So look at it from an ROTI, return on time invested standpoint. And then the last thing is, if you're thinking about building systems, there are so many free tools, as you alluded to, that are out there. There are so many free, widely available tools. You can do an incredible amount with Google Docs, Google Sheets, Zoho. There's so many things out there that are free that you can use to get started. And actually, I advise people, before you go invest in an off-the-shelf system, piece together your own process so you really understand how it works. Use some free tools to do it. Then you'll really understand how your systems work, and you'll be in a much better position to select that potential off-the-shelf solution for you. So we are running out of time. If people want to get in touch with you, find out more about what you're up to, stay connected, maybe ask a question, what's the best way for them to do that, Andy?
The best way to reach me is just email me directly. I would love to connect and talk. And I don't sell anything for our company, so you're not going to get any sales pitch out of me. If you just want to connect more, if you want to stay in the know and what I'm working on, I'm happy to do that. But you can email me. It's Andy_Rosic. So it's just ANDY_ROSIC @homedepot.com. Very simple. If you want to go check out, I have a personal website called andyrosic.com. The same spelling, ANDYROSIC.com. And I talk about that Projectopia project method there. You can also check that out. I write a lot on the blog on that site. And it relates to sort of broader sort of business. I speak to kind of business owners, founders, people who start their own companies. So a lot of my content is focused there. So if that's helpful, go check that out. But yeah, definitely shoot me an email, reach out. My other info is on my website in terms of social media. I love just having these conversations because it helps me grow more as I understand, the problems you're facing or the ways you're solving things. So I love those kind of interactions, and I'm happy to have them anytime.
Good stuff. Well, I'll have those links in the show notes, and I'll provide that link where you can get the show notes at the end of the podcast. But Andy, thanks so much, man. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for taking the time to share with us.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for having me, Todd. I really appreciate it.
Well, there you go. Lots of great advice on problem solving, building out new products and services, how to solve problems, basically, which, frankly, if you're in construction, that's what it's all about. So I hope that helped you. If you want all the links, the notes to the things we talked about, head over to constructionleadingedge.com/blog and look for episode 85. You'll be able to find it there, find the show notes, the links, ways to get in touch with Andy, all of that. And don't forget, get your hands on your free videos, The Secrets of Successful Contractors, over at constructionleadingedge.com/owner. And again, one of the best things I can do for you if you are planning to own a construction business, planning to start one, or if you do own a construction business, check out the Construction Business Accelerator at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. It's going to help you. It's ridiculously inexpensive, very low investment. It is an absolute no-brainer, and it doesn't hurt that I'm giving away over $9,000 worth of stuff right now when you sign up. constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Lastly, thanks for the reviews and the comments and for letting me know. I get comments every once in a while. I get emails from folks, and that really, really helps me. If you could leave a review, leave a rating on the podcast player of your choice, that would be fantastic, and that helps get the word out to everybody. So that's it for now. I'm Todd Dawalt from constructionleadingedge.com. See you next time. Thank you.